The lights of Viridian Crossing Station blazed against the black void of space. Ships of every shape and size docked at its arms, bringing traders from across the galaxy. Kim Taehyun stood in the cargo bay of the merchant ship, stacking containers for the third time that day. His back ached, and his hands were raw, but he kept working. He had learned long ago that complaining only made things worse. He was human, and in this galaxy, that meant almost nothing. Taehyun had been working for Merchant Lord Kryn for 2 years now, paying off a debt that never seemed to get smaller. The fat Thrakian kept adding fees and charges, claiming Taehyun broke equipment or worked too slowly. It was a lie, but what could a human do? The galactic courts did not care about one poor laborer from Earth. Human! Kryn's voice boomed through the bay. Come here. Now. Taehyun set down the container and walked to where Kryn floated on his gravity platform. The merchant's slug-like body glistened with slime under the lights. His small eyes looked at Taehyun with something like amusement. Your contract has been sold, Kryn said. Taehyun felt his stomach drop. Sold? To who? Does it matter? Kryn laughed, a wet gurgling sound. Some Kickstar noble bought you. Paid less than I would get for a broken engine. But good riddance. You eat too much anyway. 2 security guards appeared and grabbed Taehyun's arms. He did not resist. There was no point. They marched him through the station's busy corridors, past aliens of every type. Some glanced at him with curiosity. Most ignored him completely. Humans were common enough now, 43 years after first contact. But they were not important. They were weak, short-lived, and had nothing special to offer. The guards brought him to a private docking bay where a sleek ship waited. Its hull was dark blue, almost black, with strange symbols etched along its sides. A young Kickstar male stood near the entrance. He was tall and thin, with crystalline skin that shimmered silver blue under the station lights. His 4 arms were crossed in a gesture that looked like boredom. This is the human? The Kickstar asked. Yes, Lord Korshin, one guard said. As ordered. Korshin walked around Taehyun slowly, studying him like someone might study an insect. Pathetic. Look at it. Only 2 arms. Soft skin. I heard they die after barely 100 years. What do you want with me? Taehyun asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Korshin laughed. Want? I want nothing with you. You are a gift for my sister. She thinks she is too good for our family, so I am giving her something appropriate. Useless trash for a useless exile. He grabbed Taehyun by the shoulder with one hand and pushed him toward the ship. Come. We deliver you now. The ship's interior was designed for Kickstar. Everything was too large for Taehyun. The seats were too tall. The controls too far apart. Even the doorways made him feel like a child. Korshin shoved him into a small storage room and locked the door. Stay there. We arrive in 1 hour. Taehyun sat in the darkness and tried not to think about what would happen next. He had been sold before, but always to merchants or shipping companies. Being given as a joke gift to some exiled alien noble felt worse somehow. At least with merchants. He was supposed to work. What did this Kickstar woman want with him? The hour passed slowly. When the door finally opened, Korshin pulled him out and dragged him through the ship. They had docked at another station, smaller than Viridian Crossing, but still busy. Korshin led him to a private meeting room where a female Kickstar waited. She was taller than her brother, standing at least 7 feet high. Her crystalline skin was pure silver, catching the light in ways that seemed almost alive. She wore simple gray robes, and her 4 arms hung relaxed at her sides. Her face was sharp and angular, with eyes that glowed faintly blue. She looked at Taehyun with no expression at all. Sister, Korshin said cheerfully, I brought you a gift to celebrate your new life of exile and shame. The woman, Veltara, did not look at her brother. She kept her eyes on Taehyun, studying him carefully. Her gaze made him uncomfortable, but he refused to look away. "A human," she said quietly. Her voice was surprisingly soft. "Yes. Is it not perfect? The weakest species in the galaxy, for the weakest member of our family. I thought you might enjoy having a pet. They are supposed to be clever in simple ways, like animals that can do tricks." Korshin laughed at his own joke. Taehyun felt anger burn in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. Getting angry would not help. Veltara stepped closer. She was so tall that Taehyun had to look up to meet her eyes. For a long moment, they stared at each other in silence. Then she spoke. "I accept your gift." Korshin blinked, surprised. "You accept? Just like that? You brought him here. You said he is mine. So, I accept." Veltara's voice was calm and cold. Was there something else? Her brother seemed disappointed that she was not angry or upset. "No. I enjoy your new pet, sister. May it bring you as much joy as you brought our family shame." He turned and walked away quickly, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Veltara and Taehyun stood in silence. Finally, she spoke. "What is your name?" "Kim Taehyun." "Can you work, Kim Taehyun? Can you follow instructions?" "Yes." "Then come. My ship is this way." She turned and walked toward the docking area. Taehyun followed, unsure what else to do. Her ship, the Ashbourne, was larger than Korshin's, but older. It looked like it had been through many repairs. The hull had scars from weapons fire and asteroid impacts. Veltara led him inside and pointed to a small room near the cargo bay. "This is your space. There is a bed, a washroom, and storage. The ship will provide food based on human nutrition requirements." "What do you want me to do?" Taehyun asked. "We leave in 1 hour for the frontier. The journey takes 3 weeks. During that time, you will help maintain the ship. I will give you tasks each day. If you try to sabotage anything or cause problems, I will space you. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." She started to walk away, then paused. "I did not ask for you. I did not want a servant or slave or pet. But you are here now, and I do not waste resources. Work well, and we will have no problems." She left him alone in the small room. Taehyun sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. He was a joke gift. A cruel prank from one alien to another. But at least this Veltara seemed practical rather than sadistic. Maybe that would be enough. Outside his window, the station continued its busy dance of ships and lights. Soon, they would leave all of this behind and head into the frontier. Taehyun did not know what waited out there, but he knew one thing for certain. He would survive. He always did. That was what humans were good at. The Ashbourne broke away from the station and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Taehyun felt the familiar twist in his stomach as reality bent around them. He had experienced it dozens of times. But it never got comfortable. Humans were not built for this kind of travel. But nobody cared. The galaxy moved at its own pace, and humans had to keep up or be left behind. For the first 3 days, Veltara barely spoke to him. She gave him tasks through the ship's computer system. Clean the hydroponics bay. Organize the storage containers. Check the air filters in sections C through F. Simple work that kept him busy, but did not require much thought. Taehyun did not mind. He used the time to explore the ship and understand how it worked. The Ashbourne was old, but well built. It had been designed for long research missions into deep space. Most of the interior was laboratory equipment and data storage. Only a small section was living quarters. On the 4th day, he noticed something wrong with the water recycling system. It was making a grinding noise that should not be there. He followed the sound to a maintenance panel and opened it. Inside, one of the pumps was failing. The casing had cracked, and metal dust was getting into the bearings. He found Veltara in the main laboratory, studying something on a holographic display. She did not look up when he entered. "The water system has a problem," Taehyun said. "Report it to the maintenance log." she replied without turning. It needs to be fixed now, or it will fail completely in a few days. Then fix it. Taehyun waited. But she said nothing else. He went back to the pump and stared at it. He did not have the right parts to replace it. The Ashborn used Kickstar technology that was different from human designs. But he had worked on many different systems over the years. Maybe he could improvise something. He spent 6 hours taking apart components from other, less critical systems. He used a secondary coolant pump casing and modified it to fit. The metal was slightly different, but he ground it down until the tolerances matched. When he finally installed it and turned the system back on, the grinding noise was gone. The pump ran smoothly. Veltara never commented on the repair. On the 8th day, the Ashborn passed through a solar storm. Space weather was unpredictable in this region, and the storm came suddenly. Radiation levels spiked, and the ship's navigation system started giving false readings. Veltara tried to recalibrate it manually, but she was a scientist, not an engineer. Her 4 hands moved quickly over the controls, but nothing worked. The system is corrupted, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. We will drift off course. Taehyun had been watching from the doorway. She looked at him with surprise, as if she had forgotten he was there. You know navigation systems? Not Kickstar systems. But I have worked on human ships. Sometimes, old solutions work. She stepped aside, gesturing to the controls with 2 of her hands. If you break it further, I will be very displeased. Taehyun sat at the console. The Kickstar interface was complicated, with controls spread across a wide panel designed for 4 arms. But underneath the complexity, the basic principles were the same. Navigation was about finding your position relative to known points in space. The storm was jamming the quantum sensors, so he needed a different method. He switched to optical tracking. It was primitive technology that humans had used before they had better options. The computer resisted at first, not understanding why he wanted such basic functions, but he worked around its protests, pulling up old backup systems that probably had not been used in years. One by one, he found stars through the radiation. He calculated angles and distances manually, using math that any human navigator learned in training. It took 2 hours, but finally, he had their position. He fed the data back into the main system, and the navigation stabilized. Veltara had been standing behind him the entire time, watching. When he finished, she was silent for a moment. That was very inefficient, she said finally. It worked, Taehyun replied. Yes, it worked. She tilted her head, studying him. Human ships are old. We use old methods because we cannot afford new technology. Sometimes, old methods are reliable. Interesting. She turned and left without another word. But that evening, for the first time, she invited him to eat dinner with her, instead of alone in his room. The Ashborn's food system provided a meal for each of them. Hers was some kind of crystalline nutrient blocks. His was a protein paste that tasted like cardboard but contained everything a human needed. They ate in silence for a while. Then Veltara spoke. Why were you in debt? The question surprised him. My family owed money to a corporation on Earth. When they could not pay, the collectors came. My parents and sister escaped off-world, but I was caught. The corporation sold my contract to pay the debt, and you have been working for aliens ever since, for 6 years now. I was 26 when they caught me. Veltara was quiet, processing this. Your family abandoned you. They survived. That is what matters. You do not sound angry, Taehyun shrugged. Anger does not change anything. I just work and try to survive until my contract ends. Though it never seems to end. Every employer adds new charges. Veltara set down her food. I am exiled because I refuse to let my family use my research for weapons. I discovered information about the precursors, the ancient race that disappeared millions of years ago. My family wanted to use that knowledge to build planet-killing devices. I said no. So they cast me out and took everything I had, except my ship and my data. Do you regret it? Taehyun asked. No. Some things are more important than family approval. She looked at him directly. I did not ask for you to be given to me. My brother meant it as an insult. But you have proven useful. I will make you an offer. Taehyun waited. Work for me properly, not as property, but as crew. Help me maintain this ship, and I will give you fair quarters and food. When we reach the frontier, I will pay you a small salary from my research grants. It will not be much, but it will be honest work. And my contract? My debt? I cannot erase it legally. The galactic laws are complicated, but I will not enforce it. If you choose to leave when we reach a station, I will not stop you. Until then, work with me as an equal, not as a slave. Taehyun thought about this. He did not trust easily anymore. Too many aliens had made promises they did not keep. But Veltara seemed different. She was direct and honest, even when honesty was uncomfortable. I accept, he said. Veltara nodded once. Good. Tomorrow, I will show you my research. You have a strange way of thinking. Kim Tae-hyun. Different from Keek-star logic. Perhaps that perspective will be useful. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a routine. Tae-hyun maintained the ship's systems, finding and fixing problems that Veltara had been ignoring or did not know existed. She taught him about her research into the precursors, showing him ancient data fragments and broken artifacts. The precursors had been impossibly advanced. They had built structures across the galaxy that still functioned after millions of years. But they had vanished completely, leaving no explanation. Veltara believed they had discovered something profound, something that changed them fundamentally. What if they are still here? She said one day, staring at a hologram of a precursor ruin. What if they simply evolved beyond physical form, or maybe they just died out? Taehyun suggested. Even great civilizations fall eventually. She looked at him sharply. That is a very human perspective. Death as the inevitable end. It is realistic. Perhaps. She turned back to her data. Or perhaps humans simply lack imagination. But there was no insult in her voice. It sounded almost like teasing. They were 3 days from Keswick 7 when the message came through. It was from someone named Park Da-eun, a human xenoarchaeologist. She was excited, speaking quickly about a breakthrough in precursor linguistics. She had decoded part of an ancient text that mentioned a world forge buried on Keswick 7. Veltara played the message 3 times, her eyes glowing brighter with each viewing. This changes everything, she said quietly. Taehyun did not understand all the technical details, but he understood the tone. Something that would test everything they had learned about each other. The Ashbourne continued its journey through the dark, carrying them toward whatever waited ahead. Keswick 7 was a world of red sand and wind-carved rocks. The planet had a thin atmosphere, just barely breathable for most species. From orbit, it looked dead and empty. But Veltara's sensors showed something different. Deep underground, there were massive structures made from materials that should not exist. Precursor ruins, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. The Ashbourne landed in a canyon system where Veltara had built a small research outpost. It was just 3 connected habitation domes and a drilling platform. Everything was covered in red dust. The wind howled across the canyon walls, creating an eerie whistling sound. Home, Veltara said, though she did not sound happy about it. They spent the first day unloading supplies and checking the outpost systems. Taehyun found evidence that someone had been here recently. Fresh footprints in the dust, food containers that were still sealed, data pads left on tables. Da-eun was here already, Veltara explained. She has been working on site for the past 2 months. She must be down in the excavation. They found Park Da-eun 300 meters below the surface, in a tunnel system that the drilling platform had carved through solid rock. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with short black hair and eyes that sparkled with excitement behind protective goggles. When she saw Taehyun, she broke into a huge smile. Another human? Oh, thank goodness. I have been talking to myself for weeks. She grabbed his hand and shook it enthusiastically. I am Da-eun. You must be the crew member Veltara mentioned in her last transmission. Taehyun, he said, a bit overwhelmed by her energy. Did you see the message I sent about the World Forge? This is incredible. Do you understand what we have found here? Before he could answer, she was already pulling him deeper into the tunnel, talking rapidly about precursor technology and ancient languages. Veltara followed behind, her 4 arms carrying equipment. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber. It was enormous, easily 200 meters across, and just as tall. The walls were covered in symbols that glowed with faint blue light. In the center of the chamber stood a structure that looked like a massive flower made of metal and crystal. Each petal was 10 meters long, and they curved up toward a central point that pulsed with energy. This is the access point, Da-eun explained. The actual World Forge is below us, buried even deeper. But this structure is how we interface with it. Taehyun stared at the alien technology. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. What does a World Forge do? It changes planets, Veltara said quietly. In hours, not centuries. It can transform a dead world into one filled with life. Or the reverse. The precursors used it to shape entire solar systems, and someone just left it here? Underground? They left many things behind, Da-eun said. This whole galaxy is filled with precursor ruins. Most are dead, or broken, or impossible to activate. But this one. She touched one of the metal petals, and it hummed under her fingers. This one still works. I can feel it. For 3 days, they worked to understand the chamber. Da-eun had translated much of the precursor text on the walls, but it was like reading poetry written in mathematics. The words made sense individually, but the meaning was strange and layered. Taehyun helped by doing the simple work. He documented everything with cameras, took measurements, and made sure their equipment stayed functional in the dusty environment. But he also watched and listened. The way Da-eun and Veltara talked about the precursors reminded him of how religious people spoke about gods. These ancient beings were legendary, perfect, beyond understanding. But Taehyun noticed something they did not. The chamber had traps, not obvious ones. They were subtle. Doorways that could seal shut if you stepped on the wrong floor panel. Energy fields that would activate if you touched 2 different surfaces at the same time. Even the symbols on the walls were dangerous. Some of them generated heat when you looked at them too long. This place is testing us, he said on the 4th day. Veltara looked up from her datapad. Testing us? How? Look at this. He pointed to a pattern on the floor. This pathway leads to that terminal, right? But if you walk straight, you trigger pressure plates. You have to take a winding path, stepping only on certain stones. That could be random damage from time, Da-eun suggested. Maybe. But look here. He showed them another area. This symbol opens a door, but only if you press this other symbol first, which is on the opposite wall. Then you have 15 seconds to reach the door before it seals again. Why would the precursors design it that way? Veltara asked. I do not know. But merchants do this sometimes with their ships. They create puzzles so that only people who know the trick can access valuable cargo. Maybe the precursors did the same thing. Maybe they wanted to make sure only smart people could reach the World Forge. Da-eun's eyes went wide. Or maybe they wanted people who could think in different ways. Look at this puzzle. A Kiextar would use their 4 arms to press multiple symbols at once. But what if that is wrong? What if you need to press them in sequence, which requires a different kind of thinking? They began to test Taehyun's theory. The chamber became less dangerous and more like a maze. Each puzzle required them to think carefully about the solution. Some puzzles needed strength, which Veltara provided. Some needed knowledge of precursor language, which Daun had. But many of them required creative problem-solving and the ability to see patterns that were not obvious. Taehyun found himself solving puzzles that stumped the others. Not because he was smarter, but because he thought differently. Humans were used to improvising, to finding solutions with limited resources. That mindset matched what the precursors seemed to want. On the 7th day, they reached the central chamber. It was smaller than the first one, but more intense. The World Forge itself was here, a sphere of dark metal that floated above the floor. Energy crackled around it in patterns that hurt to look at. "We did it," Daun whispered. "We actually reached it." Veltara approached the sphere carefully, scanning it with her instruments. "The interface is intact. We could activate it." "AC, should we?" Taehyun asked. Both women turned to look at him. "I mean, this thing can change planets. Should we turn it on without understanding it completely?" "We will be careful," Veltara assured him. "We will just activate the diagnostic systems. Nothing more." She touched a panel on the wall, and the World Forge hummed to life. Symbols appeared in the air around the sphere, rotating slowly. The temperature in the chamber dropped 10 degrees. Taehyun felt his skin prickle with static electricity. Then alarms began to sound throughout the facility. "What is happening?" Daun asked. Veltara checked her instruments, her face growing concerned. The activation triggered a signal, an automatic beacon, broadcasting into space. Broadcasting what? Our location. And the fact that the World Forge is active. And Taehyun felt cold fear settle in his stomach. Who will receive that signal? "Anyone listening?" Veltara said quietly. "Anyone looking for precursor technology?" They stood in the chamber as the beacon continued its transmission, calling out across the stars. Above them, on the surface, the wind howled. And somewhere out in the black, someone heard the call. The World Forge pulsed with light, patient, and waiting. It had been here for millions of years. It could wait a little longer. But the 3 people in the chamber knew their time had just run out. "We need to prepare," Veltara said. "Whatever comes next will not be friendly. People kill for technology like this." Daun nodded, her earlier excitement replaced with worry. Taehyun said nothing. But he thought about all the weapons and violence he had seen in his 6 years among the stars. The galaxy was not kind to those who had something valuable, and they had just announced to everyone that they had found the most valuable thing imaginable. They sealed the central chamber and began the long climb back to the surface. Behind them, the World Forge waited in the dark, its ancient systems processing commands from beings long dead. It was ready to change worlds. The only question was who would control it when the time came. They came 18 hours after the beacon activated. 6 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately moved into attack formation above Keswick 7. Veltara's sensors identified them as Rexlon Raiders, a pirate faction known throughout the frontier. They were not interested in negotiation or trade. They took what they wanted by force. "We need to evacuate," Daun said, her voice shaking. "Get to the Ashbourne and run. They will shoot us down before we clear the atmosphere," Veltara replied calmly, though Taehyun could see tension in how she held her forearms. "And even if we escaped, they would take the World Forge. That cannot happen." "So what do we do?" Veltara looked at the tactical display. The raider ships were landing troops in the canyon, surrounding the outpost. Dozens of soldiers in combat armor, carrying weapons that could cut through stone. They had maybe 30 minutes before the raiders reached them. "We go underground," Veltara decided. "The precursor facility has defenses. I saw them in the data. If we can activate them, we might survive long enough." to find a solution. They grabbed what supplies they could carry and fled into the tunnel system. Behind them, they heard explosions as the raiders began their assault on the outpost. The habitation domes were not designed for combat. They would fall quickly. Deep in the facility, the World Forge chamber felt different now. The air was charged with energy, and the symbols on the walls glowed brighter. When Veltara pressed a sequence on the control panel, massive doors sealed shut above them. The floor vibrated as defensive systems activated throughout the complex. That will hold them, Veltara said. For about 48 hours. The precursor doors are incredibly strong, but the raiders have plasma cutters. They will get through eventually. Then what? Taehyun asked. Then we die, or they take the World Forge. Veltara sat down heavily on the floor, looking exhausted. I am sorry. I brought you both into this. Daeun shook her head. This is not your fault. We all chose to be here. Daeun. They are, for a while. They sat in silence, listening to the distant sounds of the raiders working above them, cutting through rock, burning through barriers, getting closer, hour by hour. Taehyun thought about his sister, wherever she was in the galaxy. He hoped she had found a good life, something better than what he had. Then an idea came to him. A dangerous, probably stupid idea. What if we use the World Forge? He said. Both women looked at him. Against them? Daeun asked. Like a weapon? No, not exactly. Taehyun stood and walked to the floating sphere. You said it can change planets. What if we change just this canyon? Make it into something the raiders cannot get through. A fortress. The World Forge is not that precise, Veltara said. It is designed to transform entire worlds over hours. Using it on a small area would be unpredictable, but possible, theoretically. But there is another problem. She gestured to the control systems around the sphere. The World Forge requires 3 operators working simultaneously. The precursors designed it that way intentionally. One operator manages the energy systems. Another controls the transformation parameters. The third monitors and makes corrections in real time. So we can do it. There are 3 of us. The interface is designed for precursor biology, which is very different from any modern species. It requires neural connections that our brains are not built for. Trying to link with it directly could kill us, or worse. Taehyun thought about this. Humans have something called brain-computer interfaces. We have been using them for 100 years. Since before we met aliens. What if we modify the World Forge interface using that technology? Veltara stared at him. That might actually work. Human neural plasticity is higher than most species. Your brains adapt to new inputs more easily. If we can create an intermediate system, something that translates between human thought patterns and precursor technology. I have some neural interface equipment in my research gear, Daeun said, getting excited. It is basic stuff for archaeological documentation. But maybe we can modify it. They spent the next 36 hours working frantically. Above them, the raiders continued their assault. The sounds of cutting and explosions grew louder as they breached each defensive layer. Veltara estimated they had 12 hours left, maybe less. Taehyun had never worked so hard in his life. He tore apart Daeun's neural interface equipment, combining it with components from the Ashbourne's computer systems and pieces of precursor technology they carefully removed from non-critical areas. The goal was to create a bridge that would let human minds communicate with the ancient alien system. It was improvised and messy, held together with wire and hope. But it might work. Daeun studied the World Forge controls, trying to understand what each operator would need to do. The precursor language was complex, but she was brilliant at finding patterns. She created a simplified map of the system, reducing it to basic functions they could understand. Veltara prepared the targeting parameters. Instead of transforming the whole planet, They would focus on the canyon system. They would turn the rock itself into something incredibly dense and hard, creating a barrier that even plasma cutters could not penetrate quickly. It would only last a few days before the transformation decayed. But that might be enough time to send for help. There is something else, Veltura said as they prepared for the activation. The World Forge will broadcast data when we use it. Everything we do will be sent out across the galactic network. It is an automatic function, probably meant to share knowledge among precursor facilities. What kind of data? Taehyun asked. Video, sensor readings, information about the operators. She looked at both humans seriously. When we activate this, the entire galaxy will see what we do. They will see humans operating precursor technology successfully. It will change how people view your species. Or make us targets, Da-eun said quietly. Perhaps, but it is too late to worry about that now. They heard a massive explosion above them. The raiders had breached the final door. They had maybe 10 minutes before armed soldiers poured into the chamber. Positions, Veltura commanded. They took their places around the World Forge. Veltura would manage the energy systems, using her 4 arms to handle multiple controls at once. Da-eun would program the transformation parameters. Taehyun would monitor the process and make real-time adjustments, which required the most direct neural connection. He placed the modified interface on his head. It was uncomfortable, pressing electrodes against his temples and the base of his skull. When Da-eun activated her interface, she gasped at the sudden flood of sensory input. It is so much, she whispered. I can feel the whole planet. Focus on your task, Veltura said. Her voice was steady, but Taehyun could hear the fear underneath. They were attempting something that might kill them. Even if it worked, they might not survive the experience. Above them, they heard voices. The raiders had reached the outer chamber. They would be here in minutes. Veltura looked at Taehyun and Da-eun. These 2 humans, who had become her only companions in exile, her only friends, they were about to risk everything together, attempting something that had not been done in millions of years. She thought about her brother's cruel joke, giving her a human as a worthless gift. But Taehyun had proven himself over and over. His creativity, his practical thinking, his refusal to give up even when things seemed hopeless. These were not weaknesses. They were strengths that her own species had forgotten they needed. Ready? She asked. They nodded. The raiders burst through the door, weapons raised. Their leader, a massive creature covered in cybernetic enhancements, roared commands. Soldiers spread out, surrounding the 3 figures by the World Forge. Veltura looked at the humans one last time. She saw their fear, but also their determination. They were small and fragile compared to most species in the galaxy. But in that moment, she understood something important about humanity. They did not survive because they were strong. They survived because they refused to accept defeat. She spoke clearly, her voice cutting through the chaos. She pressed the activation sequence. The World Forge came alive. The world exploded into sensation. Taehyun felt himself connect to something vast and ancient. It was like touching the mind of a god. The World Forge opened itself to him, showing him everything. He could feel every grain of sand on Keswick 7, every particle of rock in the canyon walls, every molecule of air in the thin atmosphere. The planet was alive in ways he had never imagined, and now he could touch it, shape it, change it. Next to him, Da-eun cried out. Her interface glowed with light as she fed parameters into the system. She was telling the World Forge what to change and how. Her mind raced through calculations faster than any computer, guided by precursor systems that enhanced her thoughts. Veltura's 4 arms moved across the control panels in a blur. Energy flooded through the chamber, drawn from the planet's core and from sources even deeper. Ancient power that had been sleeping for millions of years awakened at her command. The raiders fired their weapons. Energy bolts struck the floor around them, but too late. The World Forge had already created a protective barrier. The shots dissolved into nothing before they could reach their targets. "Stop them!" the raider commander roared, but his soldiers could not move. The World Forge was changing the chamber itself, the walls flowing like water, the floor shifting beneath their feet. Tae-hyun felt the strain in his mind. The neural interface was burning hot against his skull. Too much information was flooding through. More than a human brain was meant to process. He could feel blood running from his nose, tasted copper in his mouth, but he held on. He showed the World Forge what they needed. Not a weapon, not destruction, just protection, safety. A barrier between them and those who would harm them. The canyon responded. Outside the facility, the rock walls began to change. The red sandstone transformed into something new, something that had never existed before. It became crystalline and impossibly dense, harder than diamond but with the flexibility of steel. The transformation spread like a wave, racing up the canyon walls. And across the plateau above, the raider ships tried to take off, to escape before they were trapped. But the World Forge was faster. Pillars of transformed rock erupted from the ground, creating a cage of crystal around the entire area. The ships crashed back down, their engines unable to break through the new barriers. Inside the chamber, the raiders panicked. Some ran for the exit. Others fired wildly at anything that moved. Their commander screamed orders that no one followed. Tae-hyun felt himself starting to fade. The strain was too much. He was dying, his brain literally burning from the overload of information. He tried to hold on, but his consciousness was slipping away. Then Da-eun was there. In the neural link, he felt her presence, steady and strong. She helped him manage the data flow, taking some of the burden onto herself. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. Veltara completed the energy sequence. The World Forge pulsed once, a wave of force that shook the entire planet. Then it began to power down. Its work complete. The transformation had taken 4 minutes. Tae-hyun collapsed, the neural interface falling from his head. Da-eun caught him before he hit the floor. Blood ran from her ears and nose. But she was alive. They were both alive. Veltara stood over them, checking their vital signs with her instruments. "You did it," she said softly. "You both survived." One. The raiders were sealed in the canyon, trapped by the very thing they had come to steal. The crystal barriers would hold them for days, maybe weeks, long enough for help to arrive. But more importantly, the World Forge had done its other function. It had broadcast everything across the galactic network. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Tae-hyun and Da-eun recovered slowly from the neural strain. Veltara contacted the authorities and sent messages to everyone she knew. Help would come, but it would take time. For now, they were safe in their crystal fortress. On the 4th day, the messages started arriving. Hundreds of them, then thousands. Scientists, politicians, merchants, explorers. Everyone who had seen the broadcast wanted to know more. They had watched 2 humans and a Kiextar successfully operate precursor technology. It was the first time in recorded history that anyone had done so. The messages said many things. Some were offers of help. Some were offers of money or positions at universities. Some were threats from people who wanted the technology for themselves. But all of them recognized the same thing. Humans were not a novelty species anymore. They had proven they could do something no one else could. More ships arrived in orbit. The Galactic Council sent an official delegation to investigate. They were shocked to find the raiders imprisoned in a cage of transformed rock, and even more shocked to learn how it had happened. "This changes everything," one counselor said. He was a tall, thin being from a species Tae-hyun did not recognize. Precursor technology has been studied for thousands of years. Hundreds of species have tried and failed to activate it. But humans. He looked at Tae-hyun with something that might have been respect. "Your neural plasticity, your ability to adapt and improvise. These are not weaknesses. They are exactly what the precursors designed their systems to require. Within a week, the Galactic Council had passed emergency legislation. Slave labor contracts were suspended pending review. Humans had to be treated as full citizens with complete rights. The change was not universal yet, and many worlds would resist. But it was a start. Tae-hyun's contract was nullified completely. He was free. He stood outside the facility, looking at the transformed canyon. The crystal walls caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the red sand. It was beautiful, in a strange, alien way. He had helped create this. He had helped change the world. Da-eun came to stand beside him. She had been offered a position at 3 different universities. All of them wanted to study precursor technology with human researchers. She had not decided which offer to take yet. "What will you do now?" she asked Tae-hyun. "I do not know. I have been working for someone else for so long. I forgot what it is like to choose for myself. You could come with me. Any university would be lucky to have you. Maybe. Or maybe I will stay here." Da-eun smiled. "With Veltara? I think she would like that." They found Veltara in the main laboratory, studying data from the World Forge activation. She looked up when they entered. "The Council has invited me to return to Kiextar space," she said. "They want to apologize for my exile. They have offered me a research position with unlimited funding." "Will you go?" Tae-hyun asked. Veltara was quiet for a moment. Then she shook her head. "No. I prefer it here, on the frontier, away from politics and family drama. Besides, I have work to do. This facility is only one of many. There are precursor ruins across the galaxy, waiting to be understood." She looked at both of them. "I would like you both to stay. Work with me. We make a good team. The 3 of us. Different species, different ways of thinking. But that is the point. The precursors designed their technology to require cooperation. Perhaps that was their final lesson to the galaxy." Da-eun accepted immediately. She had already planned to stay, regardless of the university offers. This was the most important work in the galaxy, and she wanted to be part of it. Tae-hyun thought about it longer. He could leave, find his family, start a new life somewhere else. But when he thought about the future, he kept coming back to this place, this canyon of crystal and ancient technology. These 2 women, who had become his companions, his friends. "I will stay," he said. "For a while at least. See where this leads." Veltara nodded, and Tae-hyun saw something in her expression that might have been relief, or maybe gratitude. It was hard to read Kiextar emotions, but he was learning. Over the next months, more humans arrived on Keswick 7. The frontier world became a hub for human-alien cooperation. Research stations opened throughout the canyon system. Ships from dozens of species came to study the World Forge and the methods they had used to activate it. Tae-hyun found himself teaching others about human problem-solving techniques, about improvisation and creative thinking, about refusing to accept that something was impossible just because it had never been done before. He received a message from his sister. She had seen the broadcasts and tracked him down. She was proud of him, she said. Their parents were too. They wanted to see him again. Maybe someday he would visit them. But not yet. He had work to do here. 6 months after the raiders, Tae-hyun and Veltara stood at the edge of the canyon as a new ship arrived. It carried scientists from Earth, eager to study precursor technology. The galaxy was beginning to understand what humans could offer. "Your brother meant to humiliate you with his gift," Tae-hyun said, watching the ship descend. Veltara's crystalline features shifted in what he now recognized as a smile. Instead, he accidentally proved that humanity belongs out here, among the stars. The greatest discoveries often begin with jokes. We simply had the wisdom to take them seriously. More ships appeared on the horizon. The research colony was growing every day. Humans and aliens working together, solving problems that neither could solve alone. It was messy and complicated, and sometimes frustrating. It was perfect. Taehyun thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a debt slave to someone who had helped activate ancient technology and change galactic law, it seemed impossible. Like something from a story rather than real life. But that was the thing about humans. They specialized in doing the impossible. The galaxy was starting to figure that out. And Taehyun was just getting started. He looked at Veltara, this alien warrior scientist who had accepted him as an equal when no one else would. He looked at the transformed canyon, at the ships bringing new opportunities, at the future spreading out before them like those crystal walls catching the sunlight. "What comes next?" he asked. Veltara gestured to the facility behind them, to the mysteries still waiting in the depths. "Everything," she said simply. "Everything comes next." And for the first time in years, Taehyun felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. And humanity, despite everything, had earned their place among the stars. The rest was just beginning.